Were the flight attendants or the flight receptionists, were they helping people that were trying to get out of the plane, or was it a free-for-all? I mean, what did you see?
I think most of it was a free-for-all. There were so many people in the way that you really couldn't see clearly through the plane in front or back direction. And, when I think everybody was, at that point, was out to just get out. And that was kind of the screaming that was going on, go, 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 get out, go. And at that point, anybody that was anywhere near an exit was getting, pushed through it.
Now, would you describe it as an orderly evacuation or not? I mean, the news media, the mainstream media, and I've asked other people if they've heard. I mean, my impression from reading the newspaper, et cetera, was that it was an orderly evacuation. But from what you're telling me, it doesn't sound it was that orderly.
I don't think there ever could be an orderly evacuation. Take your car and drive it off a bridge, land in the lake, and tell me how smooth you're going to exit the car.
People are going to react as people are going to react.
People are going to react in a little bit of panic, and people are going to react in fear. And, that's, I think, the first thing that comes to mind.
Now, when people were out of the plane and people were falling in the water, slipping off, were people trying to help each other at that point?
Oh, yes. Everybody that had slipped off that I had saw on that wing for the short amount of time I was on there were other passengers trying to help them up. Yeah. Now, once everybody was exited from the plane, there was a lot more caring and conduct.
The fear of being trapped in the plane probably is what were motivating people to get out of there.
The plane was filling up quick. The time we did the whole try to get out the back till I went out the middle, there was 1.5 feet, 2 feet of water in there.
Now, the water was reported to be 38 degrees, but we were talking before, you said...
No, it wasn't cold.
You didn't feel it?
No, because at that point I was so happy just to get out of the plane. Even being in the plane, the water wasn't cold and I didn't want to be in there, but it wasn't something that was on my mind.
You got out of the plane, but you went back in.
I went back in because I saw I was standing on something that was sinking. And I said to myself, I'm standing on something that's sinking. I'm 30 passengers in the wing, so even if they start evacuating off the wing, because boats were, we could actually see them starting to show up already.
But they arrived very quickly.
Very quickly. And I said, I'll still be one of the last ones off this wing. And I saw the life raft starting to inflate in the front of the plane, out the emergency exit doors out there, which are, I guess, the slides if you do a dry landing.
Like everyone sees on the movies and stuff.
So I said to myself, the plane's just about empty. I'll go back in, walk through the water, go up through the aisle, and get out the front because there wasn't a lot of people because the left side of raft inflated lots. The door was, I guess they had a little problem opening it. I don't know if it just opened later than everything else. So there wasn't a lot of people going to that raft. So I said, that's the best place to be. I mean, I didn't have a problem swimming. And in my head, I already had a thought I was going to swim. I said, you know what, this thing is going to go down. I was on the wing. I said,
I'm going to be in the water.
I'm going to be in the water. I'll swim.
There was no life. I mean, everyone sees on TV the life vest. There was no life vest. Nobody had a life vest available to them?
They say your seat's a flotation device. That was the last thing I wanted to grab. And I saw out around the plane when we were all exiting, there were life rafts floating, there were seats floating, there was a lot floating, but all I wanted to do was go. So I think that's kind of a little bit of the panic of just, let me get out of here.
Now, you made your way to the inflatable slide.
When I went back in the plane, the water was probably as high as the back of the seats, probably 3 feet high.
So you were actually wading through?
Yeah, I was walking in it, and it was almost, it was about 3/4 of the way up the seat backs. And I walked up to the front, and the further you walked to the front, the less water it was because the plane was on an angle. So the time I got to the front, it was down a couple inches. And then I went out.
Was there anybody else in the plane?
Yeah, at that point, there were still crew people in the plane.
And what were they doing? Were they?
It seemed like everybody that was actually in the cockpit was just trying to make sure that everybody was out. And then I got out onto the raft, and there were still people in panic, but more because they didn't know how to swim.
Now, the slide that you were on was connected to the airplane.
Yeah, and that slide, they don't inflate like textbook. It had that raft probably had 6 or 7 inches of water inside of it.
In it already.
Yeah, and when we were all finally loaded on it, we were still attached to the plane.
Now, did that immediately concern you? I mean, because you believed the plane was going down.
I think everybody believed the plane was going to sink to the bottom.
Now, how many people were on that slide?
Maybe 10, 12.
Now, were they trying to think of a way to take it off of the airplane? Was that when you arrived at that point? Was that what they were concerned with?
I was one of the last couple people that were on there, And when I actually slid down on, there was another lady sliding behind me, and I kind of got half off into the water, and then I climbed back into the raft. And then, at that point, that's when the ferry boats were there, the Circle Line was there, and there was crew people on that raft with me. They knew that we needed to cut ourselves away from the plane.
And it didn't disattach from the plane by itself.
No, they actually ended up.
Nobody had a knife, or nobody had any, not even the crew?
You can't carry a knife on a commercial airline.
What about the crew, though?
You know what? I don't think the crew did, but the crew that showed up with the ferry boat did. And that's how we cut ourselves
Now, somebody
free.
threw a knife, and you got your hands on it, right?
Well, actually, the knife got thrown over to our raft. It got handed to the back, and then I don't remember who actually cut the raft off, cut us free. But we only floated free for a couple feet from the plane, and then we were already getting loaded on.
The ferry was pulling. Now, what happened after you were on the ship? Of course, everyone else has to be rescued. Where did they bring you?
Manhattan. We went to the Waterworks, New York Waterworks building, which is the west side, about 40th Street.
Now, were they set up already with a rescue
when
center?
When we arrived there, NYPD was there. There were already rescue people showing up. The place was inundated with people very quickly.
Now, were they prepared, though? Did they have blankets and whatever was needed, medical attention?
I don't think there's really any. The word prepared is a good word for anything, because I don't know if they knew that on Thursday afternoon they were going to need to rescue people out of water and need blankets and clothes.
Well, I only think of that because, and I think a lot of other people thought about it, because after all the things after 9/11, you talk about being prepared.
I think they were very well prepared.
So,
the Red Cross was there. They came with blankets relatively quick. They came with clothes for everybody, sweatpants and sweatshirts, and they brought cases and boxes of socks, and because most people were wet, and anybody that was physically injured was pretty much removed from that holding area to the hospital immediately.
Were there a lot of people that had injuries?
Yeah, there were a lot of people that were cut and bruised. There were a lot of people, not a lot, but a good amount of people that just panicked and got cut just from the panic, and got bounced around a little bit in the plane, maybe got hurt from that. Obviously overall, 155 people got off. So, a cut or a scrape or a broken leg or an arm isn't a major...
No, it's a small price to pay to survive that. How has this affected your life? Are you going to live a little differently now? Drag racing, you lived on the edge to begin with.
Yeah, and, it was kind of overwhelming at first. I've had a lot of rough nights sleeping. I work a lot, so that's kind of good because I'm usually physically tired. So, I don't roll around and ponder it too much when I'm laying in bed. But, the first week was a little tough. One, I'm just inundated with phone calls and media. And then just the whole realization of, that could have been the last day for me. Last day for a lot of people.
Sure.
And I keep hearing the word I'm lucky, I say to myself, if I was lucky, I would have taken a later flight, or I wouldn't have landed in the water. So...
well, do you think it would have been worse if they tried to make it to Teterboro Airport?
Oh, yes. That plane had, the pilot made an excellent decision. Him and the crew up in the cockpit, they did a phenomenal job, obviously. That thing, for what it weighs, it's hard to even imagine how it flies. And people say, well, the plane should average about 90 tons. And you say to yourself, and then you put up passengers and passengers and luggage.
And fuel and everything else.
Yeah, and you say to yourself, well, that's just a lot to be in the air. So, like I said, yes, the decisions that were made were relatively quick and obviously the right ones.
Chris, tell me again the last words you heard the pilot say before the plane crashed.
Brace for impact.
Chris, you're a lucky man, as well as those other people that were on the plane, and I'm glad that you were here to talk to me today.
Thank you.
Thank you for watching Counter Reports. I'm Philip Marin.